Nice guys finish last. You've heard the cliche a million times before. But is it? Let me tell you a story about an Ontario lodge that perfectly exposes the quiet trap of being too agreeable. So there was a brother who wanted to climb the progressive officer line in his lodge. He was pleasant. He never disagreed. He was, by all accounts, incredibly nice. But that niceness masked a total lack of grip or force. When the time came to pick a leader, the lodge bypassed him. Instead, they chose a stubborn, loud, chiseled old mason who actually got things done. They didn't need a pleaser, they needed someone with a spine. This isn't just a lodge problem. It's what happens in corporate offices every single day. We think playing the quiet, pleasant team player is the path to the top. We stay late, say yes to every unreasonable deadline, and nod our heads in meetings. We let colleagues speak over us, quietly swallowing our own ideas just to keep the peace. But guess what? You're not being valid. You're becoming invisible. The hard numbers back this up. A study co-authored by Charles Hurst from Western University here in Ontario analyzed data on thousands of working adults. The findings are startling. Men who scored high on agreeableness, meaning they were trusting, compliant, and nice, earned a whopping 18% less than their moderately disagreeable counterparts. That's a pay penalty of nearly $10,000 a year just for being pleasant. Even worse, the researchers ran a lab study where participants evaluated candidates for fast-track management roles. The result, agreeable candidates were consistently passed over for leadership recommendations. Decision makers don't equate niceness with competence. They equate it with passivity. If you never push back, why should they pay you more? Why should they promote you to lead when you can't even stand your own ground? So, are you ready to stop being the office pleaser? Today, we're exposing the folly of the nice guy and why developing a sharp edge might be the best career move you'll ever make. Let's get into it. It's easy to get caught up in the modern vocabulary, but let's peel back the layers on this one a bit. The very word nice is a linguistic trap. The word traces back to the Latin root necius, meaning ignorant or unlettered. And it meant that for hundreds of years. It was only until about the 18th century when it started to mean pleasant. Plainly, the word meant you don't know any better. You're just yielding because you lack the friction to stand still. You have no rough corners, sure, but you also leave absolutely no mark on the world around you. In his Nicomachean Ethics, the Greek philosopher Aristotle laid out a different path. He argued that goodness isn't a passive default or a soft setting. It's an active choice. For Aristotle, the landscape of action isn't just a checklist of harmless deeds. It's made of character. You're either praiseworthy, vicious, or indifferent. Nice is indifferent. It's the middle of the road. And as the old saying goes, the middle of the road is where you go to get run over. But let's push a little further. If we look at the German philosopher Immanuel Kant, the contrast becomes stark. Kant argued that doing something merely because you feel like it or because you want people to like you has absolutely no real weight. He called it acting out of mere inclination. If you're only helping your colleagues to keep the peace, you aren't building character. You're just complying. Real weight only comes when you act out of an unbending principle, when you stand by a law you've set for yourself. This is where the shift happens. Being civil, having manners, showing up on time, and working hard. These are solid traits. But the world casually lumps them under the lazy label of being nice. Don't fall for that translation. When you treat those qualities not as a way to please others, but as a rigid personal code, everything changes. It ceases to be about compliance and it becomes your spine. When you stand on those principles, people notice. They stop seeing a soft, agreeable pushover. They see a person with gravity. They see someone who behaves with principle because their own conscience demands it, not because they're begging for a pat on the head. Don't let them call you nice when what they mean is that you are too weak to stand your ground. Build a creed and abide by it. Let them see the spine beneath the manners. We're living in an era that worships the smooth road. Everywhere you look, there's an app, a shortcut, or a life hack designed to remove every bit of friction from your day. We've been sold the lie that if you're nice and agreeable, you can float through life without ever hitting a bump. But here's a brutal truth. If you remove all the friction from your life, you don't glide, you stagnate. Think about the concept of anti-fragility, a term popularized by Nassim Taleb. It means more than just surviving stress. It means you actually improve when you're put under pressure. Muscles don't grow unless you tear the fibers. Your nervous system doesn't sharpen unless you throw it into chaos. This soft life is a neurobiological trap. If your environment is always comfortable, your brain effectively atrophies. You stop adapting, you stop learning, and most importantly, you stop growing. The nice guy in the soft, compliant sense is the guy who avoids friction at all costs. He thinks if he just says yes, if he just keeps his head down, he's doing the right thing. But he's actually robbing himself of the exact resistance he needs to build a solid character. In Freemasonry, we like to talk about the rough ashlar, which is the raw, unshaped stone from the quarry. That stone is full of bumps, jagged edges, and imperfections. It's hard, it's frustrating, and it's inconvenient to work with. But that stone is a raw material for something eternal. Becoming a perfect ashlar, a stone fit for the temple, requires the hammer and the chisel. That is friction. That is a necessary pain of being shaped. Every time you push back against an unreasonable demand, every time you hold a line when it's easier to fold, and every time you choose truth over popularity, you are swinging that hammer. It hurts, it's loud, and it makes people uncomfortable. But that process is exactly what turns a man into a monument. If you're constantly looking for the easiest way out, you're not building anything. You're just eroding. A life without struggle is a life without substance. You need it. You need the grit. You need the pushback. When you realize that friction isn't the enemy, but the very engine of your personal evolution, you stop being a nice guy who gets run over and you start becoming the guy who owns the road. Stop trying to make your life softer. Start trying to make your character harder. Embrace the friction, because that is where the man is made. So where does that leave you? If you're done playing the nice guy who sits on the sidelines of his own life, you need a pivot. This isn't about becoming a jerk. No, I'm not telling you to be an asshole to everyone. That's just the opposite end of the same weak spectrum. This is about becoming a man of integrity. Someone whose yes is a contract and whose no is a final judgment. Here's your action plan. First, audit your commitments. Are you saying yes because it's the right thing to do, or because you're afraid of the friction and no might cause? So you start small. Practice the polite but firm refusal. When you stop being a reservoir for everyone else's needs, you suddenly have the capacity to actually stand for your own values. Second, define your square. What are your non-negotiables? If you can't articulate them, you're just reacting to the world instead of acting upon it. Write them down. Be punctual, be honest, be prepared. Not because you want a gold star, but because that is the standard you set for yourself. When you hold yourself to a higher code than anyone else could ever impose, you stop seeking validation. You become self-validating. That is the true essence of the square in our craft. It's a standard of rectitude that you apply to every single stone in your foundation. And finally, stop apologizing for your ambition or your standards. When you stop performing niceness and start practicing integrity, you will lose people. Some folks love a nice guy because he's easy to manipulate. When you change, those people will get agitated. Let them. Let them leave. What you're looking for isn't a fan club, you're looking for a foundation. Integrity is heavy. It's inconvenient. It is the exact opposite of the soft life. But it's the only way to build a legacy that actually lasts. Being nice makes you forgettable. Being a man of integrity makes you indispensable. The world doesn't need more people trying to be liked. It needs more men who are worth trusting. Stop trying to be nice. Start being solid. The stone that refuses to be shaped ends up in the scrap heap, but the stone that allows itself to be squared becomes a part of the temple. Pick up your tools, get to work, and build something that matters. This is the Brotherly Love Podcast. Let's get to work.